you this, that if we have not gotten our troops out by the time I am president, it is the first thing I will do. I will get our troops home. We will bring an end to this war. You can take that to the bank.
The United States will continue to increase our support to Iraqi security forces.
I will promise you this, that if we have not gotten our troops out by the time I am president, it is the first thing I will do. I will get our troops home. We will bring an end to this war. You can take that to the bank.
The United States will continue to increase our support to Iraqi security forces.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Kari Ilonummi. This is a NoSpinNewsSource.com monthly report for September 2014. We have an action-packed show for you today, so let's get started. Here we go. In the news, we're going to be discussing a whole array of topics before we hit this video. We're going to be discussing factors such as Ron Paul, Army preparing to use lethal force against unarmed civilians, what would be the Ferguson riots and circumstances that are unfolding in Missouri over the last 10 days. We're going to be discussing what would be some new treatment with stem cells regarding folks for prominent new treatment on the horizon for folks with stroke. We'll be discussing crucial variables regarding the CDC's investigation into lack of unsound professional judgments, and the IRS, U.S. sanctions on Russia may sink the dollar according to Ron Paul. We'll be discussing as well a whole lot of variables today. So why don't we check out this video of what would be the president acknowledging that he is bound by the Constitution.
When you were running for president, you said, quote, "The biggest problems we're facing right now have to do with George Bush trying to bring more and more power into the executive branch and not go through Congress at all, and that's what I intend to reverse." So my question to you, has Congress's inability to do anything significant given you a green light to push the limits of executive power, even a duty to do so, or put another way, does it bother you more to be accused of being an imperial president pushing those limits, or to be accused of being a do-nothing president who couldn't get anything done because he faced a dysfunctional Congress?
Well, I think that I never have a green light. I'm bound by the Constitution. I'm bound by separation of powers. There's some things we can't do. Congress has the power of the purse, for example.
And welcome back to the show. Now, let's start with fracking, shall we? Energy companies are fracking for oil and gas at far shallower depths than widely believed, sometimes through underground sources of drinking water, according to research released Tuesday by Stanford University scientists. Though researchers caution their study of hydraulic fracturing or fracking employed at two Wyoming geological formations show no direct evidence of what would be water supply contamination, their work is certain to roil the public in a debate over the risks of controversial oil and gas production processes. Obamacare premiums slated to rise an average of 7.5% for the new year, according to thehill.com. That's an average. Some folks have tripled what would be their premiums. Other folks are blessed not to. But 7.5% is still an increase in the quality of what would be for paying for your health care for the average. Obama finally losing his cool? That's right. President Barack Obama has been, roundly criticized in recent years for supposed lack of support for the so-called moderate rebels fighting the Syrian government. What does he think of such critiques? According to over a dozen lawmakers, including Senator Bob Corker, which criticized his policy, and others related regarding the administration's posture on Ukraine and Iraq. According to lawmakers in the agreement, or in the meeting, Obama lost control and yelled, quote, "horse shit," unquote. That's right, horse shit. Now, this is the president that's so cool. He's so calm, he's so collected. He has that smile that just dazzles and just throws you for a loop, just glimmers. It's like a shooting star. But now, even Barry Soetoro, Barack Obama, is losing his cool too, because things are starting to melt down in Washington, D.C., and folks don't like it. That's right. Now, Army preparing to use lethal force against unarmed civilians. Seems like every month I have to come on here with something extreme, something potent, 80% of this stuff is very easily understood as I give news articles, logic, reasoning for where it comes from, and some of this stuff is so out the box that I have to discuss that I know it makes some of you wonder about me, but that's okay. I get to be the one that says it first, and then 6 months, 2 years, whatever it is down the line, you discover I was right. So, documents. Army preparing to use lethal force against, quote, unarmed civilians during full-scale riots. And this here is a Paul Joseph Watson article from prisonplanet.com. The document released by the U.S. Army details preparations for full-scale riots within the United States during which troops may be forced to engage in, quote, lethal response, unquote, to deal with unruly crowds of demonstrators. The article goes on to state, the appearance of the document amidst growing unrest in Ferguson, Missouri, with the National Guard now being called to deal with this disorder is an ominous coincidence. The 132-page document titled U.S. Army Techniques Publication 33933 Civil Disturbances PDF was written in April of 2014 and released, obtained by public intelligence. The document makes it clear that the techniques detailed therein are to be applied both outside and inside the continental United States of America in the event of unruly and violent crowds where it is, quote, necessary to quell riots and restore public order, unquote. The training manual outlines scenarios which, quote, civil unrest may range from simple nonviolent protests that address specific issues to events that turn into full-scale riots, unquote. So, I can go on and on, but what is being demonstrated and shown here, not by myself, not by a conspiracy theory, don't say Alex Jones and the crew from prisonplanet.com, is the reason why I'm saying something so silly on my show today. No, it's actually because of these folks being so smart in obtaining this information why I am saying this on my show today, and God bless the people at InfoWars for their job and what they do under the circumstances. What would we do without decent people like themselves? So it's the Army that is stating this within their own publications, and I gave you what would be the exact number to go online and look at that Army, what would be publication, and let me give you that again. It's if you want to Google that, Google U.S. Army Techniques Publication 3-39-33 Civil Disturbances. That's what you want to Google, or go into your more private search engine, XQuick or other places, and discover that and read it for yourself. Don't believe me, believe it as you read it and discover it. So what is so scary and what is intense about this? Don't we want the government to shut down intense violence and what would be quell mass disturbances? Well, we want the government to do their job. We want law and order. We want peace on the streets. But at the same time, we also want a constitution that allows people to protest and allows them to be American. And like it states here, it's not just the military can be rolled out and use lethal response if necessary for what would be violent acts of protesting when rioting. They're stating even for unarmed, non-violent, and those are exact quotes. So with that being stated, we see a couple of factors. We see what would be the rights of citizens of the United States of America being trampled upon and taken away. We were told back in what would be 2001, when Al-Qaeda allegedly attacked the World Trade Towers, according to former President George W. Bush, Vice President Dick Cheney, and other people, that according to these folks in government, Al-Qaeda and terrorists overseas hates and hated what would be Americans' freedoms here at home. So if they were after our freedom, and if they hated our freedom here at home, well, it seems like Al-Qaeda is winning because we're having our rights being taken away. SOPA, PIPA, CISPA, and proposed legislation to curtail and control what would be information and the spread of ideas on the internet by what would be independent news companies as such. This is an atrocity. So in the name of quelling civil disturbances, in the name of the children, the elderly, in the name of peace and tranquility, in the name of this and that sounds good, they're taking away systematically, intentionally, one by one, they're drilling away and whatnot and dwindling away at your rights. Whittling away. That's the word I'm trying to come up with. They're whittling away at your rights. So some people say, Kari, Obama didn't take away our AK-47s yet, our assault weapons yet, our pistols yet. But as you see proposed legislation creating lots more red tape, technicalities, or even hitting the state level since they couldn't pass it federally for extra mandated checks for what would be gun sales, even private sales and whatnot, and so on and so forth. So what we have is, and going back to this, it's not just about what would be people protesting, not just from rioting now to protesters that will be potentially quelled and could be violently roughed up or have mistreatment. But you have to realize this is being handled not by what would be completely even just the police, as in Ferguson. They're already handling this very harshly and insanely, throwing news reporters down to the ground, smashing up cameras and doing all different kinds of things. But under the circumstances, we're going to have another violation of our Constitution. That's right. It's not just the First Amendment, Second Amendment, and other what would be amendments. We also see what would be the fact that we have habeas corpus, posse comitatus, and all these other variables in which are being completely thrown into the wastebasket. Posse comitatus makes it to where the military cannot police the people of the United States. Military is trained to rough up, kick ass, go to war. So when their training is applied to the streets of America, it's not, they know how to do lethal blows when they punch you, when they kick you, when they shoot you. They're not trained in a manner to just simmer things down and to make things necessarily peachy keen. So the military has a place, and they do. Military needs to be there, and they need to be there for foreign affairs and foreign variables, but not for what would be domestic disturbances and issues, and we do not want to see military equipment being rolled out onto the streets for what would be police officers to use either. So we have violations of the Constitution every which way that we see. But before we continue to go any further, I would like to show a little bit about what would be the true axis of terror and what's going on behind the scenes. And chances are, not just the breakdown so eloquently done here by Alex Jones himself of prisonplanet.com, but chances are even his little boy is going to be able to provide you with more of an understanding than half the people watching this show, no offense, probably are aware of to begin with. And that is a very interesting thing to consider. I'm not trying to put you down or belittle you, but I'm making a point. In the time we live in today, we know more about characters of The Simpsons, people who play on the Seattle Seahawks team, or whatever football, basketball team, or whatever you like. We know more about those characters. We know more about the neighbors, who they're having sex with at night, where they work, and how much money they make per hour on average. We know more about the gossip TV little papers we see when we're going through what would be the line at Safeway, Kroger's, or whatever grocery store you're at. But we don't seem to see and know and pay much attention to the real actuality is what is our president doing? What is my Congressman Rick Larson or yours doing? Your senators, what are they doing for us? What are they doing against us? These are the real issues. So let's get to the axis of terror. Let's watch this illustration, and we will catch you right back after what would be this video presentation. Thank you.
And I'm Leanne McAdoo. Here's what's coming up tonight.
Tonight, the Obama administration's policy of backing jihadist militants now threatens to inflame a new war that could engulf the entire Middle East. Meanwhile, ISIS says they will raise the flag of Allah in the White House. Then, the CDC goes on high alert over the Ebola outbreak, and the mainstream media says if you don't want open borders, well, you guessed it, you are a racist. All that plus much more up next on the InfoWars Nightly News.
Well, late yesterday, the Obama administration authorized military strikes to prevent what they say was a potential act of genocide against a religious minority, as well as to protect U.S. interests in Iraq. Now, a Kurdish news agency reported that hundreds of IS terrorists were killed in the Pentagon operation that took place there early this morning. Now, of course, the administration has been under intense scrutiny for the president's foreign policy failures, and with many people pointing a finger at his decision to pull the troops out of Iraq in the first place.
Earlier this week, one Iraqi in the area cried to the world, "There is no one coming to help." Well, today America is coming to help. We're also consulting with other countries and the United Nations who have called for action to address this humanitarian crisis.
Now, flash forward 2 years, and we see that that statement wasn't entirely true. ISIS has been able to, just in a matter of months, destroy all of the gains made by our troops there in Iraq. And of course, perfectly timed with Obama announcing these strikes. He goes on vacation. Trust in government is at an all-time low. Only 13% of Americans trust the government to do what is right always or most of the time, with more than 3/4 saying maybe they can be trusted some of the time, and 10% of the population says the government can never be trusted. Now, these are insane numbers. We don't even remember a time that trust in the government has been this low. And now we have ISIS, who we've been watching them destroying large swaths of Iraq. They've been all over Twitter showing their beheadings and things like that. And our focus has been on other things: Gaza, Russia, Syria, the border. No one is talking about the literal terrorists that are taking over Iraq. Now ISIS is directing threats directly to America. They say that they're going to raise the flag of Allah in the White House, and then they go on taunting America, saying, "Don't be cowards and attack us with drones. Instead, send your soldiers, the ones we humiliated in Iraq." See, so they're basically saying, come on with don't bring your drones, bring your troops. And this is one of those situations where America can actually say, bring the drones. We've been watching them driving in, but, the president just wants to go drone people in Pakistan and big wedding parties in Yemen. Now, this administration has been itching to go to war, first with Syria, then with Russia. Meanwhile, we have been watching literal terrorists take over Iraq. They've taken over large swaths of Iraq. There have been public executions, beheadings, killing Christians. Why did it take the president so long to say, maybe we might strike these guys? In fact, he's talking to terrorists, saying, if you guys get a little too close, then we're gonna drone you.
We've ended the war in Iraq. I've kept the commitments that I've made. I told you we'd end the war in Iraq. We did.
Remind them that this is the president that ended the war in Iraq.
Joining me now in studio to further break down this current bombing campaign Obama is embarking upon in Iraq against ISIS, Alex Jones.
Leanne, this is one of the biggest stories of our age because it's hiding in plain view. It's even hiding in the front page of major newspapers, but the media won't point out how sensationally evil this is, that the West, the United States, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and so many other groups through NATO and others are arming IS, Islamic State, or ISIS as it was known. This is simply a branding change from Al-Qaeda, because the West was caught funding them in Syria the last 3 years, to IS. So we're going to show people the mainline documentation that it is our government at the front of the line with France and so many others, England's involved as well, Turkey's involved, literally turning loose a group that is murdering Christians from Africa to Iraq to Syria to Egypt. And now Obama has the nerve to claim he's bombing them. So we're going to break down exactly what's behind all of this. First off, here is a map of the ethnic breakdown and religious breakdown currently in Iraq. You notice the areas in green are Shia. This borders Iran. Iran is a Shia state to the east of Iraq. Then you have this area that's basically a desert, no man's land, influenced by Saudi Arabia and Kuwait to a great extent. Then you have the Sunni Arab group bordering Syria to the west, and then you have the Kurdish area in this area of northern Iraq. Now, the Pentagon, the globalists have been on record for a long time saying that the takedown of Saddam in 1991, the second takedown in 2003, was about destabilizing a stable country and bringing in destabilization forces and breaking the country in three parts. Why is IS now being bombed after 3+ years of being given weapons from Benghazi and other areas by the Pentagon, by NATO, by Qatar, by Saudi Arabia, and by all these other factors to literally kill more than 300,000 people, launch chemical attacks, you name it, against the Assad regime who did nothing to anybody in Syria? They were allowed to come in the last 6 months, invade Iraq, take major cities. The entire time this was happening, even months ago, the Pentagon would not bomb their convoys with their Predator drones. They would leave them be, claiming, oh, we don't know what to do. They were armed to begin with. You remember about a year ago, whenever Rand Paul and others said we're not Al-Qaeda's Air Force in Syria, just neighboring, that was about our military saying no to openly arming Al-Qaeda. So when the public got upset about that, they named it ISIS, or now IS, to confuse people. But it's the black flag of Al-Qaeda. It's the same people. So why are they bombing now? 2 reasons, then we'll go over the proof. Number one, Obama and the globalists are getting a lot of heat for openly being behind radical Sunni Islam with Saudi Arabia that is financing the entire destabilization so they can take over. And they're the big Western ally and the most radical form of Islam and the people that reportedly attacked us on 9/11, if you believe the official story. So who do we attack on 9/11? Do we attack the Sunni country that supplied 15 of the 19 hijackers? No, we attack Iraq with a secular leader, formerly CIA, put in 1979 during a more reasonable policy of stabilization of the region. Though they moved to destabilization and had him attack Iran in that 7-year war in the 1980s. So it's an ongoing destabilization campaign that gets more and more morally bankrupt, more and more evil. Now, first off, he has to act like he's getting tough on these terrorists. How can they take our rights away when our own government is funding Al-Qaeda? Change the name, turn them loose, the public's not buying it. So now you bomb some limited areas up here because they had seized some infrastructure, some oil fields run by the West, and had seized some dams. They want to break the country in 3 parts. The Shiite area, then you've got the Sunni area, and the Kurd area. That's always been the plan, going back to 1991. They had to get the country broken down first, deindustrialize it, get rid of the central government in Baghdad to do that. So ISIS is supposed to only come in this deal that's been signed with Iran, that's come out, to where they permanently get this chunk of Iraq and the oil, the Kurds get this chunk and sell it to the EU, and Saudi Arabia and the West get this chunk to now break the country in 3 parts. Now, that's stated by the Council on Foreign Relations. A segregated or divided country, that's a British model of control. That's a fact, not my opinion. But on CNN and Fox News, you'll never hear any of this. It's just, we're bombing Al-Qaeda or ISIS, aren't we good? Now let us take all your rights away, when they brought them in to begin with to bring down the country. So this country has been targeted by the West for deindustrialization, population reduction, and destruction, a crime against humanity, a hardcore, long-term war crime. That's the big issue. Now, it's not just about the destabilization of Iraq. It's also about using this new Al-Qaeda Islamic State base here in Western Iraq to continue to split up Syria and other surrounding countries. They've even got ISIS now attacking groups in Western-friendly countries like Jordan and other areas. So this is a double cross of everyone, a completely devilish move. Now, finally, let's move to some of the documentation. Leanne McAdoo has some of the mainstream media articles right there. ISIS fighter claims Turkey funds the jihadist group. Well, there's no claiming about it. They have giant training camps there. There's another, London Independent, Iraq crisis, how Saudi Arabia helped ISIS take over the north of the country. Let's move on to the next story here. Another article out of Business Insider. ISIS is likely receiving funding from people living in countries allied with the U.S. It's not likely. It's been on record. This group was armed by the West, by NATO, trained by British commandos in Syria, and then ran back across the border to start this takeover. American allies are funding ISIS. No, America's doing it. What do you think Benghazi and the Stinger missiles were about? And the headlines now that they have them that we predicted. ISIS trained by U.S. government. Another article. And John McCain went and hung out with them, with the leaders of ISIS a year ago. And now they've been handed all these oil fields that they supposedly run, but that oil companies are going to buy the oil from. Can't have any sanctions on ISIS. So the only reason they're being bombed is because they're not totally run, they're protected, and they're like demons you release into an area to destabilize things. They get greedy and start grabbing more. That's when the bombing starts to say, no, 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 can't have those Kurdish oil fields. No, 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 behave yourself or the predators are coming. This is managing evil in just a cauldron of destabilization. Let's move on now to the next stack of news here. Again, Obama is being heralded as finally taking on ISIS. If you go back and look at the airlift of evil that happened back in 2001 that our own military told us about, they didn't really attack the real Al-Qaeda or Taliban. They would bomb conscript 12, 14-year-olds out in bunkers and in ditches in front of the advancing NATO and U.S. coalition forces. Then the real Al-Qaeda Taliban would be waiting, turn themselves in to be paid in gold, loaded on C-130s, 40,000 of them, and flown to safety in Pakistan. So again, Obama is doing this to distract the public from the fact that the West is actually bankrolling and protecting ISIS, and they're doing it to let them know who's boss and keep them in line, because all these groups hate each other. This is just like what Clinton did when it came out he was lying about Monica Lewinsky and other scandals, bombing an African aspirin factory that turned out had no connection to terrorists. So it's also a wag the dog scenario. And I mentioned that airlift of evil. There's the NBC News article on it. The Times of London reported on it, and many, many others, where again they took the real Taliban and Al-Qaeda force, brought them into Pakistan just 2 months into the Afghan war back in 2001 to start the terror networks up again and then move that proxy army to the next area. I want to get Leanne McAdoo's take on this before she continues with the news, and then we're going to go to a clip of a piece we did last year by Rex Jones and Rob Dew, Terrorist 101, to explain how this works. But Leanne, I get so excited when I talk about this because I've been studying it for more than a decade. And it's hiding in plain view, but the media uses the relative complexity to confuse the public.
Right, well, we're funding them, training them at secret training bases in Jordan. And then, like you said, they're kind of slapping that, no, no, no. Obama comes out yesterday almost gently saying, well, we're going to airstrike you if you move too close. You know, just, it's like, no, you're talking to terrorists. This is when you should actually be a president and talk tough. But he's like, well, we're going to do this humanitarian strike. And it's like, this is the one time people say, drone them. You know, they're sitting here basically saying they're going to be flying the flag of Al-Qaeda at the White House.
That's right. They said they're going to blow the White House up, hoist their flag, all this. And Obama's like, I'm going to nicely stop some of you because they are his allies. And he's forced to basically do this to his own minions because so much exposure is coming on this. And there's a lot of sick people out there that says the end justifies the means. We've got to control these countries. No, they're bringing them back to the Stone Age and putting people in charge that murder Christians en masse, publicly eat hearts, and are now cutting the heads off of babies and releasing the videos themselves. So this is the worst scum of the earth who is used as the threat to take our rights in America, and our scumbag government is funding these people. This is outrageous, and we've got to get the word out on it. That can stop this crime. And they're killing non-violent, non-radical Muslims en masse, blowing up their mosques, blowing up churches, killing hundreds of thousands of Christians, and nothing is being done. And the system thinks we're so stupid. And as you said, they have bases in Jordan. They have bases in Western Iraq that the Pentagon let them have. They have bases in Turkey. It's come out. And now they're even starting to attack places like Jordan that are their allies. That's how out of control they are. But see, the Jordanian government can now use these guys as an excuse, as a pretext to take Jordanian liberties, just like they can take our liberties here as well. Let's go to that report, Terrorism 101, and back to you, Leanne McAdoo, here at the Infowars.com news studios. But viewers out there, you have been shown the true historical breakdown in the last 10 minutes of exactly what's going on. So none of you in the media out there can deny that you didn't know what was happening. None of you in the Pentagon, none of you in the government, and none of us in the public can deny that we were ignorant. This truth is well known now, and it's a war crime. It's purely Machiavellian evil that we're involved in, working with Al-Qaeda to topple innocent regimes, blow up churches, and murder small children.
Hello, your friendly neighborhood patriot here for an episode of How Terrorism Really Works. terrorist group needs a scary name. Can you say El Ciada? Let's try again. El Ciada. Ah, it does roll off the tongue. El Ciada. It's a perfect name. Now let's say the green piece here represents the terrorists. The terrorists then move into Pakistan or Afghanistan or whatever stan is not under banker control. The media then joins in to hype up the terror threat.
Operates with impunity from safe havens inside Pakistan, conducting cross-border raids into Afghanistan and into Kabul.
Once the terror threat is established, the banksters puppets send in the troops to take out the terrorists they put in there in the first place. Then the bankers install their own dictator to take control of the resources and oppress the people. As a bonus, the banks, via the black ops and intelligence agencies, will then ship the drugs back into the host country so they can imprison their own citizens for using the drugs, make huge profits selling the drugs which finance other terror operations around the globe, and the cherry on the top is billions upon billions made on money laundering operations for the bankers.
In a sense, you're watching as this opium is being grown. I know it grinds at your gut. How do you deal with it? What are you doing about it?
Oh, frankly, this is a part of their culture. So, while it might grind in my gut, it's what they do.
And if the citizens of the host country gets wise to these schemes or gets uppity, the banks via media will hype in nuclear terror threats, or an underwear bomber, or a Christmas tree bomber. Any excuse to take the American people's rights. Well, that just about wraps it up for Terrorism 101, how terrorism really works. I'm your friendly neighborhood patriot.
And welcome back to the September Monthly Report, and thank you so much for sticking with us. So, as you can see by what would be that presentation, it makes a little bit more sense out of what would be the obscurity and craziness and smoke and mirrors that there is out there regarding the axis of evil, as Rumsfeld used to call it, and terrorism and how things are working today. Some of us just don't want to be able to acknowledge that our government is playing both sides and funding what would be Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Syrian rebels and folks. Some people say, how could our government do that? How could someone be so evil? How could someone ever be like that? That will never happen to me. That could never happen in America. Well, you're naive if you say stuff like that. If you think I'm a conspiracy theorist still at this point, if you think Barack Obama is going to bring you change you can believe in, well, I feel sorry for you with what's coming down the line. And once their awakening happens and you realize what's happening, it's going to be such a shock. You may find yourself coming to a bridge like this, but you won't be recording the show. You may be wanting to jump off because you don't know what the hell to do with life or how to live any longer. God forbid, but that's coming to that point. And I can see the pressure stacking on a lot of your heads. Many of you don't want to talk politics or economics yet with me, but many of you know I'm right. And many of you just haven't been put under enough pressure, obviously, because while you don't like discussing this stuff, you're not willing to fight back either. So that means you're going to need another 2 more years or 4 of Rick Larson, another 2 years of Obama, maybe Hillary Clinton to add on to it. That doesn't mean I support these people that are bad. I'm going to continue to fight for impeachment and do what I do, as I keep saying show after show after show. But there's a point that I'm trying to make. If things haven't got hard enough yet for you to care, then your life needs to get harder. That's what I prescribe to you as your doctor of politics and economics. Simple as that. When your heart begins to care and you begin to get up off your ass and do something like I'm doing, one way or another, just telling your neighbor about my show. You don't have to debate them. Give them my card and website. Let them say what they want, think what they want, but at least you spread that seed of knowledge and light to them. So, people often criticize me. There's a local farm in the area that will watch this show that I have a special message to. This local farm apparently thinks that I have sold out. They think that I project the appearance that I am for their farm. But something I've said recently in my news articles or show has thrown them for a loop, and now all of a sudden they act a little different toward me. And I can see and sense that when I visit them. They seem to act and they make statements and hints, basically, that folks as such pretend and act like they're for their farm and whatever, but they're really not. Well, this is my message and thing to folks out there. I'm doing everything I can. What the hell are you doing? I'm asking you a question. People criticize me. People criticize the guy that's running for Congress, and I will be here shortly. Britt Larson can hang out where he's hanging out. As far as I'm concerned, he's just keeping the seat warm for me, because I'm coming in next. Nobody's going to get Britt Larson's place from now till then. I'm taking over in the interest of the American people. That's right. I'm going to stick to and adhere to the Constitution 100%, so help me God. And when I, put an oath on that, I will mean it to the Lord himself, not just my constituents, that vote for me on that day. So, to your farm, to those folks out there, to people that don't like me, don't understand me or whatever, what are you doing for America? Okay, you're keeping your farm cleaned up, you're making your money, it's good for you. What are you doing for everybody else? What are you doing to support local candidates and folks, decent people, to see to it that you'll have a good congressman coming up, a good mayor coming up, this or that? What are you doing? So, for that particular farm, I'm going to be making a private dialogue as well. A video on this bridge as soon as I get done recording this one for the monthly report. But anyways, what are you doing for the world besides cutting people like me down? So many of you. So if you're not going to do something right, remember that old saying, if you're not going to say something nice, don't say something at all? It's kind of like that. If you don't got something truthful to say, something productive, if you don't have some decent constructive criticism for a guy like me, then get the hell out of the way, because the American people need to progress. They need jobs, and they need to get eating and feeding and moving forward with their futures. And speaking of moving forward, let's move forward in the show, shall we? The CDC scientists took shortcuts handling what would be deadly bird flu virus. Investigations finds. That's right. 5 stroke victims were treated with stem cells extracted from bone marrow. The treatment triggers rapid regeneration of damaged brain cells. The patients regain power of speech and use of their arms and legs afterward. That's right, all 5 of them. More than 150,000 people have a stroke in England alone every year. Not even talking about the United States numbers and whatnot, where this study was actually done at the Imperial College, and scientists show there that it shows great potential. The stem cell treatment does is a very early stage and needs years of testing, but this could really lead to something miraculous, and that's wonderful for folks that are having or are going to have a stroke and health problem someday. So, Representative Franks stated Obama, quote, ignored us, unquote, and states now ISIS is, quote, beheading its way across Iraq, unquote. Hillary Clinton says the failure to help Syrian rebels led to the rise of ISIS. That's right. So what she is saying is, first of all, she would be contradicting what I say, which is ISIS, Syrian rebels, Al-Qaeda, ISIL, all these folks, Mujahideen, that they're all are interrelated, little individual sects of the same overall factor. It's kind of like, you could say, Pentecostal, Church of Christ, Lutheran, Seventh-day Adventist. They're all Christian churches. They're all individual different sects, but they believe in Jesus Christ, right? So they're Christian. Well, it's kind of like that. So these are all little different groups with little leaders, but in general, while they're not real organized to the greater picture, they have their own little flavors. It's like Pepsi Cola, Coca-Cola, Shasta Cola, different flavors of overall the same genre and same thing. So it's similar as such under the circumstances. So, and they all are interrelated, they're all terrorists. So she's stating that we should have basically funded the terrorists more than we did, and that would have led to these other terrorists not being as armed and dangerous as they are. Go figure. That's like telling Jeffrey Dahmer, or saying, okay, if we give Jeffrey Dahmer and these evil killers their own state, let them have Washington to themselves, and then maybe people won't be murdered anymore. Okay. Probably start killing themselves or each other. Anyway, so a grisly photo showing a young boy said to be the son of an ISIS rebel holding the severed head of a slain Syrian soldier proves the, quote, hideous atrocities this terror group is capable of, says Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott himself. So you have these psychos that are going across Syria and whatnot, and these are not people in the Syrian government, military, what have you. These are infiltrators. These are terrorists. Most of them are not from Syria at all. They're from places abroad, just like the terrorists that did what they did September 11th, 2001. Where were they from? Saudi Arabia, the hijackers were. Same thing. Most of these terrorists are from Saudi Arabia and other places as well. So what's happening is we see these crazies being sent in, orchestrated as such, to do evil atrocities, and they're even having their children murder and hold heads of other soldiers as they're 6, 7 years old. So you want to know what kind of president you have. He's the type of guy that will give money and weapons to people that kill, murder, behead Christians, and yet have their children behead Christians as well. That's right. So that's what kind of a president you support. Now there's a darkness that I see and feel coming over many people in America. We have two groups that are coming out. We have a real separating. We have the real dividing lines happening. People are choosing a side. Some of us are choosing to be better people, get healthier, get in shape, get closer to the Lord, get off of drugs, or lose a bad husband or wife, find a better person, or do this or that. Many people are doing the right thing and coming to folks and actually giving people like me a chance. Nobody's calling me a conspiracy theorist, right-wing nut job anymore. That's a big step in the right direction. But there's also another group, a predominant group, which is even larger than the one that's awakening. And those are the ones that are going into a dark mode. Ones that really don't care any longer what the truth is. I see a coldness in people's hearts. I see people that laugh at each other when their neighbor falls on their face. They don't come out there anymore to reach a hand. They want to be out there with a YouTube video and get 10,000 likes and views on YouTube tonight over watching my neighbor bust his tooth out of his face as he's falling and suffering from pain. Now this is a reflection. Many of you are very, very unhappy in your own lives. If you were even halfway happy, you wouldn't be sadistic in getting off on the suffering of other people. But the truth of the matter is many of you really, the reason why you're so interested in Seahawks, Hollywood, drugs, sex, escapism, or what your neighbor's doing, smoking, poking, stroking, or whatever, is because of lack of what would be things happening in your world. Or perhaps there's a lot happening in your world, but it's not very good, and you have lack of control over the circumstances. So as your worlds are breaking down, the old saying goes, misery loves company. And as folks drown, even if they don't intentionally do this, they tend to reach out and grab onto other people's ankles and take them to hell with them. So it's a very interesting situation, like I stated. Obama seeks $500 million to train and equip Syrian rebels. And right now we're going to show you this video discussing this by mainstream news folks right now. Thank you very much.
The White House is now asking Congress authorization for $500 million. That would be $500 million to train and equip these moderate rebels in Syria. But there's deep concern, as you know, that some of that equipment could wind up in the hands of ISIS if these guys lose.
Well, that's been the president's principal reason for delaying until this point, arming rebels in Syria, which is something, as you know, that some of his advisors, Hillary Clinton included, Secretary Kari included, have been pushing for some time. Now he's doing it. There will be critics who will say ISIS is already strong. In effect, Assad has already won that conflict to some degree, and it may be too late to arm these rebels, but who knows? I mean, clearly, the administration is realizing that they and the various parties involved are digging in for a long battle, and they need this pressure to come from inside Syria as well, in addition to whatever they do in Iraq.
And we know in Iraq, ISIS has taken over lots of U.S. equipment that was in the hands of the Iraqi military. They simply abandoned those tanks, those armored personnel carriers, those missiles, and ISIS has control of that. Right now, there's concern about that could happen in Syria.
And welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Now, just a couple days prior to what would be the August month recess that Congress went on, they passed a law, what would be HCON Resolution 105. I'm going by memory. Yes, okay. HCON Resolution 105, in which, on the 29th of July, in which the Congress stated, and this is 370 votes to 40. That's right. Even Congressman Rick Larsen and all the other 9 members, all 10 of them, signed on to it in the state of Washington. All the Democrats and whatnot signed on to this regarding telling President Barack Obama, if you invade Iraq, you better come to Congress first, buddy. What did the president do a few days later after this being passed, even by his own Democrats? He said, hell with you. Even though he says earlier in the show he's bound by the Constitution. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution declares that it's Congress that decides war, not the president. It's Congress that decides the power of the purse, not the president. Think about how laws are passed. Is it the king? No, we don't have a king system here. We don't have the Queen of England here, besides the fact she owns our president. We have a legislative system here. The legislators in what would be Congress, Senate, they pass the bills, and then it goes up to the president's desk to either be vetoed or signed into law. So, here we are. This president is bound by the Constitution, but he chooses to disregard it, and the American people are turning their backs to. Many people are playing what an elderly woman by the name of Donna told me a couple years ago. She said, Kari, many people are playing the blame game, and when it comes into play, they won't want to acknowledge and accept some of the factors about Obama because they were dumb and they voted for the guy too. So for many of you, unless it got that bad because you lost your home, wife, kid, something, you know, type of a deal, your kid because of health care you couldn't provide or something, so they died with from a treatment you couldn't provide them, unless something major happened where you're really just break and sever the ties. Many of us, just like we do when we have a boyfriend or husband or wife that's really a scum, we try to make them look good because we don't want to look bad. Because if we acknowledge my wife is a whore, if we acknowledge my husband is a woman beater and a robber, what does it make you look like for being with that person? So it's kind of like that. It's this real simple thing and whatnot. I have a family member that every time she introduces us to what would be the guy she dates, she always makes them look like they're just so special and wonderful. We find out they're usually not. But anyway, so this is really interesting because the Congress finally put Obama in check. Even Rick Larsen signed on to this. And this shows this is getting to the point to where now even Rick Larsen knows Obama's on the Titanic and I better save my own ass in career. And he's smart. He is. You're finally catching wind, Rick. But the thing is, I think you're still too slow, Mr. Larsen, because, well, now that you signed on to this, now you drew the line in the sand. Now, Rick Larsen, what are you going to do about it now Obama has blatantly disregarded your ruling? What are you going to do? Are you going to bend over for Obama? Because he's obviously not even bending over or even listening to you. So now we're at a point to where somebody's going to cave in and curtsy and bow to the other side. Is Congress going to give in? Such as my Congress member, Rick Larsen, that I plan on de-seating over the next 4 years. I'll probably wait till 2018, most likely, to run. Maybe 2016, we'll see. It's all about the time being right. The American people around here don't care enough yet. They're not involved enough yet. I am typifying what would be not just the crisis, I typify the solution to the crisis. So once you're ready for the solution, and once you've discovered that all the other options have failed, all those gray hairs of wisdom, all those folks and people that you think look more like a congressman than perhaps me, once they've all been discredited, and most of them are already 90% of the way there, such as Obama, Bush, these people, these were the leaders. Now, they're looking pretty stupid. Why? Because it's not working out in the economy. Your businesses don't have half as many people buying your burritos, spaghetti, lasagna, suntans, massages, or whatever. I know. I'm going in there. I know. Most of you are hanging on by a thread, hanging on by a prayer. Most of you know if things continue the way they're going, which is down, most of your businesses are going to wash up, small businesses, over the next 4 years. You don't want to hear that? I don't care. Change the situation. You can't beat me? Join me and people like me. It's not about me. It's about you. That's the reason why I come on providing the tough love that I do. That's the reason why I say things you don't want to hear. If I wanted to get into government, and that was my whole intent, and that's all I cared about was me getting into government, me having money and all the special goodies and trinkets and power, if it was all about me, I'd be coming on here telling you what you want to hear. I'd be coming on here much more mild on Obama. Much more mild this and that. I'd be playing more of a Rick Larson, more of a schmooze all side of the field and get the best of everything. But I come on here telling you what I believe in my heart and soul. And I tend to have facts, including New York Times articles in which specifically state that you are more likely to be audited by the IRS, according to the New York Times, if you are poor than if you are rich. That's right. Statistically, more people get audited that are poor than are rich. Why? Well, we could speculate, but I'll say this. A poor guy, even if he is right, doesn't have the money and resources to fight the government to save their house over taxes. And like any other bully, they like to pick on an easy victim. Now people, let's talk about Ferguson, Missouri real fast. First of all, there's police brutality. There was a pastor shot by rubber bullets for only chanting Jesus, 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 and was shot by rubber bullets by police. People say, Kari, it's just pieces of rubber. No. People get killed from that. People become maimed and dismembered. Not dismembered, sorry, it won't actually remove a huge body part from you, but people have had deformalities and whatnot from these rubber bullets. They are a piece of steel wrapped in rubber. They are very hard and they have the potential of killing you. So these things are horrible. So 2 people have been shot, 1 killed, which you have heard of already, Michael Brown, I'm sure. The officer's name has not been released yet. It's a war zone down there. And we got video footage right here in which we're going to show you, in which one of the psycho military acting cops on the streets has a machine gun pointing at what would be news reporters. Not robbers, not potential psycho killers in which are in his space, but just people with a camera. That's right, not even the fringe news media. I'm talking regular stuff, Al Jazeera and other people. Yeah, with a gun in their face yelling, I'm going to effing kill you, unquote. Check out this video and see it for yourself. And I will say this video is very graphic. If you have children, there is explicit language, and please have them leave the room for the next 2 minutes of this segment, and we'll catch you back on the other side. Thank you.
Gun range.
My hands are up, bro. My hands are up.
Gun range. Hands up.
Fucking kill him.
Hands up.
Get back. You're gonna kill him. Get back. What's your name, sir? Your name's Go Fuck Yourself? Alright, go fuck yourself.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, officer, go fuck yourself.
Officer, go fuck yourself. He's trying to kill me.
I hope you guys are watching. He had to be told by another officer. He's ready to kill my friend. I'm on a stream. Oh, you're that Australian guy, right? Yeah. On my stream, he just said he's gonna fucking threaten to kill. He's gonna kill us all. I can't believe that shit.
And welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Now that's pretty potent. We see what would be the stuff happening, as I stated years ago, that we would have a breakdown in America. We would see race riots being instigated and pursued, of color versus color, class riots, poor versus rich, rich versus poor, people breaking down. Remember what I stated about earlier regarding people enjoying seeing the suffering of others, sadistic variables. You look at some of the movies that have been coming out over the last 7 years. Now, when they make some of these scary movies, well, movies like Freddy Krueger or this or that, well, those seem pretty lame and almost G-rated in comparison to what they do now. Now they make movies like Saw, where you get to watch people having body parts removed from their body, like their fingernails or something, and be tortured and having bones broken apart in slow motion and stuff like that. That's some pretty hard, sick stuff. I can't even watch a show like that. I've tried a couple times for about 5 minutes. It traumatized me, literally. It made me feel weird and violated inside, literally. I can't watch that. I can't. No matter what, I can't make it look good. I can't do it. So I don't claim to be perfect. I go to rock concerts, I party, I have a wonderful time in nightlife from time to time. Many members of Congress and folks in government have a nightlife as well. Many folks like myself that are workaholics that are doing this 8, 10, 12 hours a day or more, 60, 70 hours a week, do often have another side of their life in which to counteract and balance from all that stress and hard work under the circumstances. I'm not into drugs or anything like that, or extreme binge drinking or something like that, but it is what it is. So like I said, I like a little bit of music and whatnot. Everybody has and deserves a little free time and peace of mind. But back to the show. CIA confirmed. CIA spied on Senate staff. The head of the CIA agency apologized privately to lawmakers Tuesday after an interview review revealed that CIA employees had secretly monitored, as alleged, the computer usage of certain Senate staffers. Director John Brennan's admission this week that members of his agency, quote, acted in a manner of inconsistent with the common understanding, unquote, among CIA and the Senate Intelligence Committee came months after Senate, what would be Dianne Feinstein of California, the chairperson of that panel, complained on the floor of Congress that her staff had been subject to covert monitoring as they worked on an official investigation into the CIA's now defunct detention and interrogation practices. That report, a 6,300-page review of tactics employed by the CIA, considered by some to be forms of torture, has yet to be made public. White House accidentally leaks the post-9/11 CIA torture report findings. That's when Obama came out and admitted we have tortured some folks. Isn't it interesting too, this president, every time he gets put on a spot, or when people ask what would be his press secretary, when did the president find out or discover this? When did Obama hear about Benghazi, the what would be Lerner and the IRS going after what would be conservative groups, or these other factors? And you keep hearing the same thing. The president says, oh, I just heard about the news yesterday. I just read about it yesterday on the news. Or the president just read about the newspaper a couple days ago. Isn't it funny how it always is the president just discovered this and that? You know why it is that way? Well, first of all, they're trying to make him look innocent and whatever, but a little bit of truth is coming out. There actually is some truth to this. The truth of the matter is he probably did just read it a day or two most of the time before. Really. As much as liars as they are. So what does this show? This president is sitting back playing basketball, video games, board games, sitting back, pissing and shitting away, excuse my French, your tax-earned money, and as your lives are going down the drain, your jobs, and so on and so forth, as the price of food, gasoline, and everything, it's not getting cheaper, folks. It's going up, and your wages aren't going up fast enough to keep up with the pace. The standard of living is dropping like flies out of midair. You know it. You feel it. 90% of you aren't going out to eat half as much as you used to. Now, some of the big investors, financial institutions, big business folks that are coming here to the website and whatnot, you know what I'm talking about. You're seeing statistically. You're still able to eat good, but you know what I'm talking about, and the other people are actually feeling it on the other end of the spectrum. So, it's happening. People are moving to places like this. Not because they want to, but because they can't afford an apartment or house any longer. Now, I'm not saying everybody's moving out to the woods yet. Most of us have a friend or a family member or somebody somewhere, or there's a little help provided somewhere, little patches for the boat. But eventually, things change. So here we are, folks. I don't mean to give a loud speech or go on, but we're at a point in the road where we got to come together, look after one another, become Americans, whatnot. We have differences. Let's set aside the differences of Republican, Democrat, so on and so forth. God bless you. Thank you so much for watching the show, and I'll see you next month for October.
I'm going to jump to another story now because there are also new developments surrounding the NSA. While President Obama may be poised to order a ban on eavesdropping on friendly leaders monitoring, it's still unclear what exactly the White House knew and when. The president is increasingly facing accusations from all sides of being a mere onlooker in his own White House. Republicans are calling President Obama the, quote, bystander president. A memo on the RNC's website points out numerous examples of a president who appears to be left in the dark.
I heard on the news about this story that Fast and Furious, where allegedly guns were being run into Mexico.
Do you know when he first knew that there was a problem?
Well, I think it became clear fairly early on, the first couple of days, that...
So not before that, though? Not before October 1st?
When did you first learn that the IRS was targeting conservative political groups?
I first learned about it from the same news reports that I think most people learned about.
What did the president find out about the Department of Justice's subpoenas for the Associated Press?
Yesterday.
And
I mean, let me just be clear. We don't have any independent knowledge of that. He found out about the news reports yesterday on the road.
I certainly did not know anything about the IG report before the IG report had been leaked through press.
Just a quick question about Solyndra. Has the president been briefed about what has developed on that?
I think he's probably read some news accounts of it. I'm not aware that he's been briefed.
Okay, there's so many reasons why that's not fair, but we can start picking them apart. It's not just Republicans who are calling the president's level of...
This is what I carry. It's a car with a crimson trace.